All right. More in-depth notions on the electric stuff. It seems that in our time frame, in our modern era, that electric made an expanse that may or may not have carried sound waves, sight, vision, inner vision, and sound. This is perplexing because Pharaoh Joseph was around when we conceived that the Egyptians, now Hindus, were robbed biblically. When they threw the trees in the water coming out of Egypt, they became fat. Before that, however, Pharaoh Joseph was just born. When they had trees by the water, they did not throw the trees in the water, and Laban, which means white, became skinny. This is where we perceive that they were robbed, the Egyptians, now Hindu people. So they have two tribes in India, biblically noted, and a black and white fish is robbed in Isaiah 6, 7, and 8. And at chapter 8, you have Damascus, which may mean fish, Ishka, Samaria, which means black and white, and Assyria, which means slaves, which is now tri-state Miriam's again. So that they have two tribes in America, and they had two tribes in India. But we're trying to discover today, which deals with electric and air memory combos, stacked teeth, hold your breath, and by accident you just stored memory. Those who are in pain hold their breath, and by accident store memory. If they were to combine one more memory, for some reason they would have a shell and a relapse, which we feel heals broken bones. Getting to electric dealt with water, memory, air, gas, and eventually electric, then made a huge turnaround when we saw the Locs, volts, and seals. Volts, at this point, if you were to revolt in a unvolted lock volt, you would reproduce organs as soon as you revolted it, and you would have electric. If you broke a volt, lock, or seal, you would reproduce organs and have electric. But this array was placed off to the side for other studies and inquiries like water memory, the evaporation of memory by water versus any outer space elements, which you might be able to get a gust of wind recognizing the time frames of memory's evaporation, which might be continuous. But the study of recent discoveries showing what we think is a Merriam's attributed, then long life attributed assessment seems to be electric volts related. Holding our breath as a child, you would store memory and you would have a static, a huge various amount of electric static. You would take one electric beam and remember that the organs are still related and that with only one electric beam out of the entire stacked teeth, you would be able to unravel via organs, Marimosa. But what you're really looking at is intervisionary. And so what we're going to go over is a few electrons, 1 volt electrons, which leads to more definitive acts, almost via air memory and electric. So we're going to bind those together, and we're going to use judgments thus far described by David. David passes over Ephraim, Psalm 78. David, I think, likes a bronze and iron portion in the tallest mountain, which puts us in Mongolia. David may go to Ethiopia and come back singing. And I don't know if we're not going to make Australia's rabbit. There's a rabbit for Israel coming out of Egypt to worry about. But the judgments ring bells where we're from. And so what we're going to do is look at the considerable portions and claim that after all, one electric line volt out of a stacked static bomb would do all the functioning features, not just judgment features, but all the functioning features that a human body would do with that 1 volt. Why is that? And so as we started to dig into this endeavor, we found that it's always been that they followed intervisionary, so we can put intervisionary plus electric, and that's intervisionary of inward parts, by the way. Sound waves, denotations, descriptive paths, definitive paths, young versus old, absorption of any material at young versus old. That was on a basic, broader scale than just volt electric. And so how far does that rabbit hole go? We found that air memory would have tried to describe these ideas and they would have elaborated more. We find that the volt electric can do the same concepts, variety, variations that people do in that 1 volt. Not only that, but judgment scales would seem to vary at earlier ages. Therefore, the conception is that Caleb fat will stop at midsection abdomen. It will not go any further for those inquisitive at that time frame, or who seem to want to be shorter while they are growing. Where they get older, we think that the body actually wants to be short, and we're left with only a few variations in the Bible. The Garden of Eden shows that they would give birth in pain after breaking one of these volts or seals. This could be due to the fact that you're having a longer pregnancy. It could be that maybe the Bible wants us to reseal and revolt as many of these volts, locks, and seals as possible. Even angel babies are described in the Bible. With the discovery of electric being a little bit more prehistoric than what we seem to understand today, we still move up in notches to things like sight and sound via electrical current, gas versus electric cars. We are claiming at Discovery American Rediscovery that electric might be healing to the body. Magnets were supposed to be healing to the ancient Egyptian. Electric in that sense, we think, has existed since ancient Egypt. And the magnet, Efer, also means magnets or lead. We are finding that there is a various amount of celestial growth from within, and that the same concept of storing your own memory before going into a battlefield seemed to be useful, because it seems that the entertaining idea may be more social in the future than we had least expected, that when being under attack, which is what has recently happened to most people in America, they have been able to get out of that situation due to their own independent strife or struggle. But it seems to be still useful before getting into the very congealed volt system or unified volt system. It seems, however, that if you take that one strand of electric versus a staticky bomb, we're holding our breath as a child, what they're really doing is storing memory via air memory. And if they stack one more memory on top of that teeny parcel, they would produce a NIME which heals broken bones. Working with the volt system, you would have to know the bolt, locks, and seals system, which we think that the entire body is really just trying to connect all the seals that they have broken in the past. Therefore, they should all portions actually be a seal. Therefore, if you were just trying to connect one seal to the other, you would just go to limber parts of the body which are nonchalant, and they should actually correspond like a volt or a lock or a seal would correspond as. Stuff to steal is right around these margarines, and to ask your neighbor, Isaiah 6, 7, and 8, to us, is the entire re-stealing of the system itself, which is described in the Bible as almost what is required. Steal not once but twice, Mahar Shiloh Hashbaz, and things to look for in the future. Until next time, over and out. Volt Congo.